Hi, my name is Matt Walstetter. I've been a grower for a long time, and my wife and I also own a dispensary called Pure Green. And I want to talk a bit about writing the business plan and then using that business plan to get your business funded. So there are kind of two broad categories here. I'm going to talk about them both together because there's a lot of overlap. That's getting funding for a new business, a startup, something that doesn't exist yet, and then getting funding for an expansion. Again, there's some differences that I'll point out, but mostly they're the same. And we have done a fundraising round as both. We decided we wanted to start a dispensary. We didn't have enough money to do it ourselves. We went and raised the money to do it. We operated it for about 6 months and saw that there was a great opportunity to expand, that rec was probably coming, and so we went through the process again and are almost done with it. To go ahead and raise some money to expand the business. So the first thing, if you're a new business, and that canvas is amazing, and it's something I wish I had had as a tool before we got started. But once you complete that canvas, if you're a new business, then you need to really think about a mission statement. And a mission statement is a single sentence that kind of ties up what you do. And one of the things in doing this is you go from smaller to larger. You go from the general to the detail. So you start with a mission statement, and for example, at Pure Green, ours is, and I may not be quoting exactly, but to provide a safe, secure environment for patients to get the best cannabis and cannabis products at a great price from a friendly, knowledgeable staff. And so it's not going to win any literary awards, but it kind of hits on the important things that we do, and it sums it up in a sentence. Obviously, if you have an existing business, you're going to want to think about whether expanding changes your mission. So you go back to that mission statement, you take a look, and you see if you need to update it. And from there, you're ready to sit down and write your business plan. Now, your business plan serves two main purposes. First of all, it's going to be the blueprint that you use to actually build the business. So it's really important in that regard. It's also a sort of a sales pitch. If you don't have enough money once you write out this plan to fund the business yourself, well, then you got to start thinking about how do I raise money. And your business plan is your primary tool for being able to raise that money. It's a hard thing to do in any industry. It's extra hard in our industry where we've got federal illegal and all the issues that come along with it. But starting with a good plan is going to really, really help this process. So a great resource, you may not be able to go to the SBA, but they can't stop you from using their website, and their website is an amazing resource for writing a business plan. When we did our plan to get started and our plan for the expansion, that was where I went. They'll list out the elements of a plan, and then and a description of what they are. Enough of a description for you to be able to write it. And you pick and choose a little bit. I did not use every element on their website, but I used a lot of them, and I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the important ones. First of all is the executive summary, and this may be the most important part of your business plan because a lot of people are going to read this and decide based on that whether they're going to read the rest of it or talk to you or meet with you. So it should be really dynamic. And the executive summary, it's a summary of what's in the plan, but you really want to hit on a couple of really important things. First of all, who you are, and follow closely what you do. Those are both really important. Then you want to be really clear about what you're asking for. And we're going to talk more about the ask later, but put it right in the executive summary. We're seeking X amount of dollars in exchange for it. It shows you're confident about what you do, and that's part of what investors really want to know right up front. Is what are you looking for? And then maybe put a little bit about why your business is deserving of this money, what it is that sets you apart, whether it's your unique selling proposition or something about who you are, but a little something that helps convince them. So in addition to the executive summary, there's some other components. One really important one is a market analysis. And with this, what you want to do is you want to kind of lay out, you're going to assume that whoever's reading this doesn't know our industry. And again, with the cannabis industry, that's especially true. There's so much that's really unique to what we do. So you want to assume that people that are reading this don't know the difference between shatter and wax, and frankly don't even know what a concentrate is. You want to lay out the market. So if you're a dispensary, you want to talk about what's out there, how many dispensaries there are, what they sell, why they're like yours, why they're different. So you want to lay out the market. If you have any data on the size of the market, that's always great. Who your competition is. Also, what's special about your market. So in our business plan, I had a section about, in the market analysis, about federal prohibition and how that works. So anything that's unique. In addition to the market analysis section, you want to have a section about organization and management. And that's a chance to really sell your team. Because a business plan doesn't have to, it has to be a good idea. But an investor is also looking for someone who can actually execute that idea. And this section is really important about that piece of it. So what you want to talk about is why, if you have owners, you're going to talk about them in a section about them. If you have any of your management team in place, with an expansion that's more likely, you want to talk about them. If you've got, we mentioned our marketing consultants, our security consultants. We wanted to really show investors that we were going to be able to execute this plan once it got funded. There's other sections, but in the interest of time, I'm going to skip over them all except for the last one, which is your financial projections. Now, they say on the SBA website and other places that you need projections for 3 to 5 years. I did 2 in my business plan. It's hard enough to do projections, but when you're talking about medical marijuana and then recreational coming online and you're projecting a market that doesn't even exist yet, the reality is that none of us really know. So, 2 years, 3 years, 5 years. The financials should cover a few main things. You want to talk about costs, and costs you break down into startup costs and operating costs. So you want to talk about how much money you need before you open your doors to do everything that you need to do. And that's your startup cost. And then operating expenses are how much it's going to cost every month to actually run this business. So in addition to your expenses, you got to project income. And same thing, you're just going to look at how much can I think that I can make. Now, I'll tell you, I've written a lot of business plans in addition to the 2 that I did for Pure Green. Most of the time, I felt like my projections were just kind of weird. It's really hard to project, and it's even harder to project into a market that doesn't exist yet. So do your best. Try to make reasonable assumptions, but don't get too hung up on it. So anyway, once you've finished your plan, it's going to give you a lot of information, including the crucial piece of information, which is how much money do I need to actually execute that plan. And then you go take a look at your bank balance and see if you have enough, and probably you don't, because that's how it is with most businesses. So the next question is, how do I get this money? So in order to get the money, you have to make a decision about not only how much you need, but what you're offering in return for that. And typically, you talk about debt versus equity. Am I borrowing money, which I will pay back with some measure of interest? That would be debt. Or am I offering somebody a piece of my company in exchange for contributing a certain amount of money? And so there's pros and cons to both. Obviously it's great to not have to give up any ownership, but the reality is, let's say that your business plan calls for buying $1 million building and putting $1 million into it. Well, you may not be able to afford to borrow that money and then start paying debt service right away. You may find that even if there's money available, you have to go with equity. Now, again, with our industry, it's another place where we face these challenges. It is very hard to borrow in our industry. It's not impossible, but when we went out and started pricing loans, we saw interest rates 20, 30+%, and that's just insane. There's no way you're going to be able to handle the debt service. And so there's a good chance that you're going to need to give up equity. There are some landlords out there that will do a build-out in exchange for an inflated rent for a grow site, so that's an option too. Be creative, but ultimately you got to figure out what you need and what you're offering in exchange for. And that is the groundwork of your ask. So your ask is exactly that. What are you asking of investors, and what are you offering in return? And it's really imperative when you go into a pitch meeting that you know what your ask is. Now, you could put your ask in a range. In exchange for $500,000, we're offering 20 to 40% of the company. In exchange for $1 million, we're offering 30%. Whatever it is. But you want that ask to be clear. It should be clear in your plan, and it should be clear in your mind when you go into the pitch. So you have to find people to pitch, and that's its own challenge. Steve's handout had a lot of different options for people in early stage funding. Eventually, you're going to start to be asking for more money than a lot of those sources can offer. So then you need to start actually finding investors. And so you're just going to work your Rolodex, you're going to work all your contacts, talk to your professional team. Your lawyers probably come in contact with investors. Your accountants probably come in contact with investors. These are people that can help you make introductions, help you meet folks, help you find people that are worth pitching. And then there's the pitch itself. So going into a pitch, the most important thing that I found in my experience is preparation. You should know your plan inside and out. You should know the numbers. Not every single number that's on there, but you should be able to quote some of the important ones, like gross sales, like profit margins, some of those. I like to think of it when I go into a pitch that I want to have an answer for every question. And so that means anticipating what the questions are, going back to your plan, to your financials, to all of that, and just preparing yourself. I mean, it's as simple as that. You want your ask to be clear. It's hard to ask someone for $100,000 or $500,000 or $1 million. It's even harder when that person's a stranger. And it's even harder when you're asking them to do something, to give you $1 million for something that's a federal crime. And frankly, a lot of us who have a history in this business are used to not talking about that stuff and are used to operating in secret. You've got to get that mindset out of your head. You got to walk in there and you got to ask for that $1 million like you were asking for change for $1. You got to be so confident in what you're doing that, of course, I'm asking for this. And so you want it clear in the executive summary. Another part of the business plan is the expansion plan, how you plan to expand. So for us, when we were going out to pitch our expansion, it was, hey, we need this much money to do A, B, and C, and that's how we're going to grow the business. Also I would just add professionalism. Part of that is being prepared. Clean yourself up a little bit. It's worth it. At least in my experience, and do the things that any professional in any industry would do. So I'm told I'm out of time. Do we want to just end it off? Or?
Do you guys have any questions about this, or should we keep going with Marco for 5 minutes and then I think we're going to wrap it up? Do you all have any questions for Matt? Go ahead, Les.
Yes.
Yeah, that's... Yeah, so there's commercial paper out there. There are people who are willing to loan, 6 figures, 7 figures to people in our industry. But like I said, when we went and priced it, we didn't hear anything less than 20-something% for interest. And what we figured out is if we borrowed that much, the debt service would make it impossible to succeed. So for us, in our position, there just was no way to borrow the kind of money that we needed to borrow. So we switched to an equity play. And it's a very individual decision. You have to be really careful. Giving up ownership is something that can't be undone. Then it's like a marriage. Once you sign those contracts, you're with that person, and you got to deal with them. So the other thing too is that if your business succeeds, you're probably going to be going out to raise more money, and so you have to be careful in these early rounds about what you give up, because obviously everyone wants to keep control of your company. So if you say, well, as long as I get 51%, I'm good. Well, if you get 51% and your investor gets 49%, and you guys need to raise more money, well, now you've you've priced yourself out of that majority share. So you want to think about, is there a way that I can give up 10% of my business, 20% of my business, and do what I need to do? It's also an option to phase things. So if you look at what your numbers say, and the amount of money that you need is going to cost more than half your company, then you start smaller, and you can bring the investors in. And I will also just add that valuation is, without a doubt, the hardest part of this. It is very hard to value a business, whether it's a startup, even a going concern is difficult to value. It becomes much, much harder in the cannabis space, where you have to figure out how the legal and regulatory situation and the federal government impact that valuation, and that's a real challenge. And there's no great answer to the valuation piece right now, except just talk to as many people as you can and gather as much info as you can and make an offer that makes money for you.
Which way we've done more south since last 20% of whatever business is allowed something like that. This is the proportion of business should find that's 30% all borrowing.
Well, and other than banks, for borrowing?
Yeah. There are definitely some people out there, like I said, doing commercial paper. You just have to find people that do business loans. And again, that's where you kind of tap your network. Talk to friends, fellow business owners, professionals, and others that have been through this process, and they might have some guidance for you.
So we'll let Marco talk for 5 minutes, and then basically literally 2 minutes statements, and then you guys can finish